we joined SaaStock a little while ago and are a part of their founder circles. It's been absolutely brilliant for us. We first came into it to further our community, our reach, our network, and to learn from some of the world-class speakers that SaaStock has come and speak. And I have to say, it has been absolutely superb for us.
Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. Oliver Pinson-Roxburgh, CEO of defense.com and Bulletproof. Welcome, Oliver.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, good to have you on the show. I know we've spoken a few times, as you're saying, like before, obviously, like through the SaaStock founder membership, which you're a member of. But actually, this is the first time we've actually like been on a Zoom or a video call together. Hopefully soon, in person for some other circumstances. But good to have you on the podcast and have the opportunity to speak with you and learn more about your business. Obviously, I've been getting some snippets through the founder membership of how well you're doing and the value you add to the other founders, which is great. But Oliver, actually, why don't we start? First of all, telling us a little bit about yourself. Like we always like to start with that. So who is Oliver Pinson-Roxburgh?
Yeah, well, maybe I should keep into the business side of things to start with. But I guess it's probably useful to understand my background. So and how I came about. We came about founding defense.com. So I've been in the cybersecurity industry for over 20 years, and I've done all manner of different things in that time. I sort of started out actually doing a lot of the penetration testing. So we have a concept most people are pretty aware of pen testing these days. Well, at least I hope people on this podcast would be, which is that we're essentially ethically hacking organizations' networks and helping them to understand, how they can protect themselves. So I sort of started out doing that, breaking into building societies legitimately, obviously, doing things like allowing, social engineering people, bribing people to gain access to buildings, and once in, then trying to get access to sensitive information and data, and then take all that information back and report it back to people. So I sort of started out very much in that area of just seeing where people's cybersecurity challenges were. And then, of course, as my career progressed, sort of worked in lots of other organizations, large American-based cybersecurity companies, sort of helping out to grow markets in EMEA and places like that. And so my background has really been in cybersecurity, and the introduction to business really came about through that networking with businesses and people that sort of led me to where we are now. And it probably does sort of dive into a bit more detail around where defense.com is at today and how that all came about in the story of defense.com. So we could sort of get into a bit more detail of the business itself. But yeah, ultimately that's really been my background and from the very beginning. I've always had that kind of customer engagement as well. So a lot of my roles have been evangelists or going out and talking to clients and sort of helping to understand where their pains were and their challenges and those sorts of things. So I always had that kind of natural affinity with understanding cybersecurity and trying to help solve problems and solve challenges for businesses. And so that's what really got me excited about the cybersecurity industry, because it was that, that businesses really needed it, didn't really understand how to solve the problems. And that sort of led to where I am today. And I'm still very passionate about cybersecurity as a whole, just really talking about helping people and businesses, and it's obviously a pretty hot topic these days, and people still aren't quite getting it right, which does pain me a little bit, given that I've been spending 20 years trying to help people to do it better. But yeah, that's, I guess, me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And so you're the CEO. We haven't had that many. I'm sure we've probably had a couple, but CEO of two companies, on the show, Bulletproof and defense.com. Maybe judging by the .com, defense.com is the SaaS product, and Bulletproof is a services product, right? So tell us a little bit more, like, how have you, come into the role as to be CEO of two companies? Why would you do that to yourself? Is it actually, not a problem at all? And just a little bit more about that would be good to get the story.
Yeah, got from punishment, I guess. So yeah, I mean, that comes back to the history. So in my early career, I was going out and seeing organizations to try and help them to start out their journey in cybersecurity, and I actually met my co-founder Mark, who's also part of the network as well. And he actually introed me into SaaStock. He said, I've joined this network, and you should get on it, because it's great to sort of share information with others and all those sorts of things. And we'll sort of talk a bit about our circle, because I think we've got a really good circle already, and we can chat about that a bit later on. But I met Mark when he had this kind of idea of Bulletproof. And initially, Mark's a serial entrepreneur, and I met him to sort of talk about how he could implement cybersecurity into some of the services and companies that he was providing. And I made an impression on Mark, and then a few years later, he contacted me and said, "Hey, I'd really like you to help grow Bulletproof and join the team." And so we eventually, he actually, in the very early stages, I said no, because I was actually working for a new company and I had this kind of new strategy of going out and learning a bit more about some of the other areas of cybersecurity. But he wore me down in the end, and I joined him. And when we first talked about what we wanted to do with Bulletproof, it was very much really focused on helping to solve enterprise problems for enterprise customers, and that was really our big core focus, because we were providing these consulting services. So again, penetration testing and consulting, like general data protection consulting and ISO and all these sort of very enterprisey type services. But as we got to talking, we started talking a lot about small businesses. And we said, you know what, there's a real market for the small businesses, because they don't really know what they should be doing in cybersecurity. And they need a lot more guidance. They just almost need a business to sort of come to them and say, right, here's a product. This thing will solve a lot of your cybersecurity problems in one go. And that's where we founded defense.com, because we got into this conversation of like, we could absolutely make this a SaaS product. We could make it really, really affordable for the small business. We could develop it in such a way that you could make it easily managed, irrespective of your experience, your knowledge, your technical ability, and your understanding of cybersecurity. And we could really drive it towards the business owner, because then you could go to a business owner and say, right, cybersecurity is difficult. You should be doing something about it. We've got a SaaS product that would help you do that. And then we had this kind of, I guess, this view that we would build this technology that would be like, have a product-led growth strategy, and then would kind of drive, the growth within that product. And that's obviously where we came up with defense.com. And we spent 3 years actually trying to build defense.com out. And we really didn't want to release it too early. Our idea was that, let's just keep it under the radar. And we've got this kind of great services business going along anyway, and it was sort of growing quickly. Like, we were experiencing sort of 87% growth year on year. And we thought, you know what, actually, let's just keep this thing under the radar a little bit before we get it out to market. And I guess, we'll probably talk about it a little bit later on, but I guess it's counterintuitive to some of the traditional SaaS approach, where you sort of get it out there as an MVP and sort of see how it goes and then grow it over time. But we've sort of felt that we didn't want to release too early, because we didn't want to get into a situation where, the product would be found out by other technology providers, and we'd almost miss the boat. So essentially they're kind of complementary, right? So managing it as a CEO and taking on these two different brands, these two different entities, is relatively straightforward, because a lot of what we do in defense.com has come out of what we do within Bulletproof. And of course, the Bulletproof side, we've built a really strong team around us that sort of helps to grow that part of the business and continue to keep that sort of stable growth within that space. And then defense.com product really complements and delivers a lot of extra value to those services. So they work well together, and it means that we use the same teams as well. And we've sort of grown the company from 30 people, like 20, 30 people in our early stages in the first year. And it's a five-year-old company now, to 130 people now that we are today. And so we've seen quite a significant growth, and a lot of that is obviously to service both sides of the business. But yeah, we can certainly talk about that as well, around our decisions around growing the team and how fast we grew the team and those sorts of things.
Have you thought about rolling it into like one company, and you have the SaaS and then you have the services kind of, element of it, but the SaaS is the main company?
Yeah, definitely. We talk a lot about it. It's almost like, Bulletproof has built such a really strong brand and this is the other thing, just to give you a bit of, I guess, about the background for everybody, is that we very much focused on the UK in the very beginning, and that was always our strategy, was that let's build out of the UK, and let's build our footprint over here and build a really strong brand for ourselves in the UK. And then the idea would then to expand and grow out, and obviously defense.com was the mechanism to grow globally. Because as you can imagine, as a services business, just kind of scale resources all around the world, it's a tricky thing to do really well. So we always had that plan that defense.com would be that would be the way to kind of leverage, the services we've got and grow globally by sort of providing it through the SaaS platform. But we're just always very nervous about the brand, right? We've built such a strong brand in the UK around Bulletproof, to suddenly just lose that overnight, and to a completely rebranded defense.com. The other challenge, of course, is you've got a very SaaS-based product that you're selling to clients, and positioning it to businesses as a SaaS product, and then you've got a very consulting-led business on the other side. And you line up with enterprise people maybe seeing a SaaS brand, and does that really work? And they want to see an enterprise focus rather than a SaaS focus. So again, getting that balance right has always been a bit of we're still learning, and I think we still see there's an opportunity for us to do it, to do the switch to defense.com, but we're not going to do it in a rush. We're going to do it over time and work out. And hopefully, essentially, what happened is the SaaS brand will just outgrow Bulletproof anyway, and we'll just naturally just make that switch.
Yeah, I'm sure there are many case studies that you're aware of that have done the similar thing. Obviously, one I can think of about is Price Intelligently and Profit Well, where they had the services business, which was like professional services around how to price your SaaS products, and I think amongst the best in the business around that. And I think aiming that at probably sort of mid to large size sort of SaaS companies, 6-figure type sort of like deals, and having a very kind of healthy, I think like $10 million, sort of like business there, and then a free SaaS product, or a freemium kind of like SaaS product that was aimed, at the kind of the earlier stage sort of startups, but seeing now they've kind of rolled the Price Intelligently into the Profit Well brand. And I think Price Intelligently might be a product of Profit Well now, but maybe Patrick Campbell is one to speak to there for just some advice around that. Certainly it can help with that when the time is right. And you mentioned like fast growth, well, across both companies, which is great. So obviously you're doing something right, your team are doing something very right there. Around the SaaS company, obviously we take more of a focus on that, given our audience is mostly SaaS, although there might be a lot of people that are in the services businesses kind of doing a similar kind of path, like doing a SaaS on the side or thinking about doing a SaaS product. But around the SaaS company, what sort of metrics can you share in terms of where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. You've got to remember as well that some of our traditional services were also sort of MRR-based services. We kind of have already had that kind of journey to providing MRR. It wasn't always just kind of day rate services, but of course, a large proportion of our revenue was day rate. I would say 60, 70% maybe of our revenue at one point in time was day rate business, and then the rest was sort of MRR-based business, MRR-based services, which we then have continued to grow. But in October, we launched defense.com. So that's kind of when we did the launch on defense.com. So the growth within the company for the staff that we've got, a lot of that was actually predating the launch of defense.com, because we wanted the customer success teams in place. We wanted the right marketing strategy. We wanted the right sales strategy for the product once it launched. So we had that strategy to kind of hire early, which is why we had the staff already pre-October, really to start really pushing the product out into market. And since then, we've sort of soft launched with a view that we would then start really promoting the product, and that's solely how we would then go on to deliver our services. And even the day rate services we now offer through our MRR-based service through defense.com. So customers kind of buy it and they utilize the platform to then we engage and deliver our services through that technology. So we're $12 million in revenue, and of which 800K of that dollars is MRR now. And the switch has really pretty much transitioned from being 60-70% revenue split between day rate and the kind of MRR based services now to moving purely to the kind of SaaS and MRR based models, moving almost the other way around. So we're probably 60-40 split, maybe a little bit better than that now with that. So yeah, it's been an interesting one, because you are going back to traditional clients and saying, we've got this great defense.com SaaS product. We can offer you a whole load of extra features on top of the services we provide you today. And you can still get the same sort of service, the same consulting if you want it through the defense.com platform, but you get all the added value of it being delivered in this new way. And also, obviously, all the functionality that comes with defense.com complements a lot of the things that we were already doing. So it's a pretty natural kind of evolution, really, for them to start taking on services through this kind of SaaS model. And obviously, a lot of the technology which we've added to the solution has led to obviously additional customers asking for more services and more technology, or either way, right? Some of them have traditionally just done consulting services with us, and now have started using the SaaS product and really started to add more to and use more of those features, and likewise the other way around. So actually, a few of the guys in my circle, we also talk about this, that they've got a similar model where they start with like a SaaS product and they sell consulting services on top. So you almost say like, look, I've got this product, so I can deliver it to you. But if you need help to get it up and running, or you need help to do additional things with the product, you can buy services in addition to that. So we've had a lot of conversations in our own circle around, what's the right model, on what works well, and especially if you do still see there's a sensible approach to that kind of consuming that revenue or getting that revenue in and maintaining it. And why would you not do that? You want to keep that revenue, so why not kind of bake it into the service or find a way to still continue to deliver that to customers?
Actually, before we go into the next question, Oliver, you mentioned circles. You talked about circles a few times. Just for those that are listening who might not know what circles are, these are the founder circles, which are the peer groups within the SaaStock founder membership, where we bring groups of founders that are at a similar kind of revenue stage, go-to-market model, whether venture-backed, bootstrapped, geography, etc., and put them together in monthly sort of like peer groups where you get together and talk about how you can kind of grow your businesses and help each other out. So just putting that context out there, because some people might not necessarily sort of understand. So we'll probably go at the end, talk a little bit more about the SaaStock founder membership. But again, for any founders kind of listening, that hopefully may be interesting for them, as we haven't talked about it sort of too much before. But so we talked about some of the metrics and where you're at the moment. What about raising capital? Have you done it? Are you doing it at the moment? What's the you planning to be bootstrapped? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we haven't to date. We've been bootstrapped and sort of really done. We've grown through sort of organic growth and sort of funding in through founders. But we are now looking at it. And the reason for it is because we want to grow internationally. Like I say, we've dabbled a little bit. So we've done some we've built out a team in the US, not a massive team, but we built a team in the US. I think we did about $1 million in the first year without really trying, just to test the market out, to see what's out there and how can we do it. But obviously especially in those markets like the US, we didn't really want to go in there without too much of a budget to really go and do it well and do it in the right way. So the strategy is now to do our Series A, to raise some money to enable us to do that growth. Mainly investment still in R&D and sort of marketing the product and getting the brand out there, because especially Devents.com, it's a very new brand. Not a lot of people know about it yet. And also we've obviously been learning a lot about what really is the market looking for right now. Like I said, we sort of started out thinking, well, we can go over this small business product for small businesses, but we've actually found that the market at the moment that's a really hot market is where you've got sort of a small to medium sort of enterprise type company that's between 100 and 1,000 employees is really our sweet spot. So in order to really hit that market, and especially going into places like the US, you've got to have enough money to really do it well. So we felt that it was the right time. And again, we'll talk about it a bit later on, but that's the one real lessons learned for us, is that you kind of almost want to be in that position when it's right to when the iron's hot, you want to strike, right? So that's one thing that we feel like we probably could have done a bit better, but again, we'll sort of cover it, but I guess a bit later on around those things. But so right now it's about looking at raising money. We started that beginning of the year. And it's been a fairly slow process, actually. More to find the right people for us, and the right investors, the right and the right way of approaching it, really, that's going to work well for us as a company, and also to get the valuations right and things like that, with where we want and what's going to really help us to grow. And there's still a decision to be made. Do we just play it out for a little bit longer and raise a bit later on? And so we've had a good go at it so far, and we're still plugging away at it and see how we go.
I mean, obviously, reading, listening a lot about the markets at the moment, in terms of, we've had a couple of crazy years, right? And investing in SaaS companies. And now when we look at it, public market, companies' valuations have dropped significantly, and then on the private market, VCs are being a lot more kind of cautious, and I think founders are not necessarily getting the valuations that, whether it's that they want, or whether perhaps they expected from what's been happening sort of recently. Some advice, I was listening to another podcast where they said, well, look, if you have enough cash in the bank for the kind of the next 18 months, try and just ride it out, as long as possible, and then raise, in 12 to 18 months time. I mean, I don't know how sort of dangerous that is, but is that something that you're kind of like seeing as well, like the more cautious approach from VCs? And, you mentioned about valuations. Does it kind of back up any of that?
Yeah, I think to some degree. I think some of it's also our inexperience. Neither myself or Mark, have previously raised any money. Mark's had a number of successful exits, but never had to raise any money to do that. And I've never been through that process either. So we both sort of were learning it on the job, as it were. And we've learned a hell of a lot. I mean, I would definitely say, like in that period, we've learned a lot that's kind of really, driven us to doing things differently in the company, and preparing ourselves a bit better. And like I said, it's more really to be able to be in a position there where if something is the right time to do it, then we have everything we need to make that happen. And so it's been a bit of an interesting journey from that perspective. And I think it's just more just the expectation on the valuation ourselves. We just had this idea in mind of how much money we felt that we needed to really do the right growth, and also just the approach. Each investor is slightly different. Some are more expecting you to take that money and make the most out of it, and others are sort of expecting you to raise a lot quicker. And it really comes down to what the expectation is from the investor as to how that journey would play out. But like I say, I mean, our idea was always to raise the money and then spend a few years trying to grow out the business, and more that we didn't have to think about raising money every single year. It wasn't that sort of growth. But then, like I say, some investors say, no, we expect you to. We want you to be quickly moving into your Series B, raising another ton of money, and then going and using that to do the next round of growth. So we had to build a model to be able to do that. And we have a strategy that will enable us to do that if we ever wanted to. But we have really been talking to each investor independently and saying, look, we can really do it either way you like. Our preference would be, in a lot of cases, where we would sort of do it, in a way that we sort of make the most out of that money and we try and scale the company. But of course, if that's not the way to grow the business, then we would definitely entertain the other approach. It just means we change our model a little bit. But yeah, you're right. It is. I think it is just generally a much trickier market to looking at it now than it was maybe six even as short as 6 months ago.
Well, good luck with it. I'm sure you'll find the right approach for you, and plenty of other founders to speak to that have got that experience that you can kind of pick their brains and see what's happening. But I definitely seeing a real kind of, if you go down I don't know, a traditional kind of venture capital route, I would expect, as you said, like you raise your Series A, then the clock is ticking. They want you to kind of raise that Series B within like 12 to 18 months, sometimes sooner, and then it's the C, and then you're kind of on that path, right? But we are seeing some like different examples, companies like I think like Supermetrics and Lemlist, I think for instance, where they've raised a good amounts of money from like more like growth sort of like funds, where they've taken secondaries and then also then put a bit of money into the business, but don't necessarily have that then pressure to it's not a Series A or a B, but it's giving them that extra capital to kind of take the business to the next level and kind of almost in some ways still remain viewed as bootstrapped despite taking quite a bit of money. But there are kind of different options out there for sure for founders that are listening. So I guess it depends whether you want to build that $100 million business and have the ticking clock and do it in that way, or build a $100 million business but kind of just do it without that kind of added pressure to constantly be raising.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So looking at obviously in terms of your revenue, you're doing extremely well. Had very fast growth. What would you say are the kind of the 3 to 5 key steps that the business has taken in Defense.com's case that have enabled you to kind of get where you are today?
Yeah, I guess it's nothing too awe-inspiring, with what we've done. I think we've sort of just done um, the traditional things just really well. I think we one thing we did do was really focus on inbound marketing. We've never really done any sort of outbound marketing activities at all. Even with Bulletproof as a business, the focus was never on outbound marketing. We've done a really good job, really, from the history of all the businesses, certainly that Mark's run. It was always a focus on inbound marketing, doing a really good job of digital marketing, focusing on SEO and PPC, and really driving forward the growth of the company through using that as a method. We obviously did do a lot of brand awareness activities, going to sort of big events to sort of build the brand for Bulletproof. But obviously with Defence.com, going to physical events and doing those sorts of traditional brand awareness activities that you would do as a cybersecurity company sort of fell out the window really quickly when we were sort of pretty much ready to launch that product. So we still sort of stuck to the inbound marketing strategy, but obviously as we've grown and got to a slightly larger scale, we've then started to look at, well, okay, where do we get the next round of leads and customers from? And obviously the model is very different for a SaaS product, as you would imagine for a consulting company. But again, still very much reliant on inbound marketing, and then starting to top that up with outbound marketing. And of course, for Defence.com, the big focus is now on brand and how do we grow the brand within a much larger scale. So that's kind of, I guess, number one was always to focus on the marketing. We did actually build out a sales team pretty early on, and that's grown to a fairly significant part of our business now. So we've really grown out the sales team. And the reason for that is actually that cybersecurity is quite a tough sell. If you don't generally just go to a cybersecurity company and just buy a product, you kind of want to be sold to. You want to understand, well, why should I go with you? And I've got to build some confidence in this company, especially for some of the things we're doing with Defence.com, because we're proactively monitoring these organizations' environments. They're trusting us with a lot of data and trusting us to be the early warning signs for them. So, and those products are generally quite complicated, and that's why Defence.com was built to simplify those things. So you don't tend to just buy them off the shelf and just go with it. I mean, AV and products like that, people did, right? You just kind of bought an AV, whatever the big brand was at the time, and you'd start using those solutions in your business. But generally speaking, you do need a sort of a sales-led approach initially, and that's where we started with Defence.com. So we built the sales team to help with that sales-led approach. We did try a product-led approach very early on, and it kind of is working. We're bringing in trial customers, we're getting them into the platform, but you just seem to get a better conversion on those trials if you're getting a sales-led approach. So we've now moved to a pretty typical of most SaaS products I've seen recently, where it's a demo or a kind of a more of an interaction with a person before you then land into the product and then start using the product itself. But like I say, that the strategy is still to try and, I wouldn't necessarily say we're the first, but to sort of really be one of the very few sort of cybersecurity companies that really worked out how to do the product-led growth thing well. And we've got a few ideas that we're working on right now to do that. Like I said as well, the other thing that we decided to do was to not go down the route of actually sticking out an MVP product in front of our customers and then iterating fast. We decided to build first. We spent 3 years building Defence.com, like I said. And then the idea was that once it's out there, we'd start to iterate it, listening to our customers and sort of building on what we already knew they needed. Because again, in the cybersecurity space, most people have a rough idea of what they need, but we wanted to be the leading them in the right direction of what the things are they absolutely need to help grow their business and to win more customers themselves. So we felt like, right, okay, let's build the products we know that the organizations need. And then once we're ready, we'll launch it to those customers. Again, you want confidence as well as a security product. You don't want to put out there a rubbish product that doesn't really help you. So that was the idea there. And then I think probably the last couple of things that I would say have been our sort of focus is to sort of bring on, and I think it's worked really well, is to bring on a few strategic roles ahead of the curve. Like we actually brought in customer success. I felt like way ahead of what we probably needed to do that with the product line. But again, it was just, we didn't want to ruin the experience. We wanted to be seen as innovative in the space, and we didn't want customers to hit the platform and just not know what to do with it, because we are dealing with quite complex problems. It's not as straightforward as just jumping into the platform and where you go in some of the features of the SaaS product. You've got to do a bit more configuration before you can get the real value out of them. So we just wanted to make sure that that went really smoothly, and we could support our customers quickly in the platform. So I think for me, it's kind of like laying down those foundations and not rushing it too much. But I think we absolutely probably we could have done. We probably hit the market a bit earlier, and maybe we would be on our raise by now, because we would have been out there into the market and a bit further forward, and we probably would hit the last year when every other cybersecurity company was getting billion-dollar valuations. So
yeah. Well, where are they now? I don't know.
exactly.
But I know a lot of companies that raised last year, they're certainly the valuations are down and are having some challenges. But no, I really appreciate you sharing that, and good stuff. You say, like, even though, like as you said, maybe some of it is not necessarily well, it is foundational, but not necessarily anything groundbreaking. But I think it's important for people to just listen and kind of learn that, hey, look, we're doing inbound marketing, and that's what we did, and it works, right? And then inbound marketing is not necessarily new, but to kind of get that reiteration, emphasis that, hey, look, this is an approach that we took. It might not actually be the right approach for other companies, but doing all these things and doing them together, this kind of really helped us grow the business to where it is today. So I appreciate sharing that. And what about yourself as a CEO, or like twice sort of over, but how have you learned to become a good CEO?
Yeah, I think my problem has always been, as I say, my kind of history has been very much involved in cybersecurity. So I still feel like I'm way too involved in a lot of things. I would say that's pretty typical of most founders, I would say. I found it, it was a bit of an epiphany, that somebody said you should be working more on the business rather than in the business. But I still find that really hard, to get out of that with the weeds. You just feel like you're firefighting a lot. And I think there is still that escalation point that, somebody wants to get something done. You'll end up being that guy, right? That they bring you in, even internally, sometimes there's escalations need to happen, and people will just say to me, well, if I don't get you involved, then I know things won't happen, which is obviously a problem to fix, right? I mean, that's a problem for me to fix and say, well, that should never be happening. So it's always been that struggle, to get that balance right. And I think probably the biggest lessons learned is actually thinking about it from the point of view of, once you get to a certain size of organization, you start to realize that the things that you do yourself, your day-to-day tasks, have an almost immaterial impact in comparison to what you can do if you share and support the organization. There's much, it's that many hands make light work type strategy, but you've always got that head thing in your mind that if I do it myself, I'll do it really well. Or, if I do it now, it's kind of quick and I can get it done. Or, hey, I've had this really cool idea, I'm going to go chase it down myself, because you've kind of got that founder approach where you think I could probably build this thing in a matter of minutes. But the reality is that, if you put that to your team, then you both support your team, and you also get it done a lot quicker than you probably think in your head that you can do it yourself. And it's going to be much more product, and company, and customer ready if you don't try and do it yourself. So I think that's been the one thing that really has made me think, motivating myself more to sort of helping the individuals and watching them and seeing the impact of what that does to your team, rather than trying to sort of address all your tasks. I mean, it's massively frustrating. You sit there in a day and you take that approach where you help everybody that sort of comes to you, and you don't try to get involved too much in those things, but you never get around to your tasks that you set yourself. And you kind of almost in the back of your mind, you're thinking, is this just slowing down the company because I'm not doing those tasks and not getting those things done? But what you don't realize is the impact you're having on the rest of the business by being more involved in supporting them and letting them get on with it. So I'm still a bit in the weeds, and I need to sort of take myself out of it. And I know that's a definite area where you got to learn fast. And when you think about it, with in the future, as however big this company gets, you can just imagine that somebody with 5,000 staff, as a 5,000 staff CEO, your strategy, your approach has got to be that, because there's just no way you're going to be able to address the tasks that you need to address at that stage. So definitely that for me. I mean, one thing that I felt that really worked really well, we introduced this quite early on, is to be very transparent with our employees. And that's been hard to maintain. We do quarterly business reviews where we get online and do it virtually, and we basically bring all the main the main leaders in the team and the managers, and we get them to talk about each of their departments, and we're very transparent about what we're doing. We explain that we're raising money, or we talk about the wins and the losses and the failures and the successes and all those sorts of things, in order to make sure that there is that transparency. And it really came about because as we started to grow, we noticed that more and more people, you weren't really sitting around the table with them anymore, and they were losing sight of what was going on. And you kept hearing this, well, I didn't know about that, and I didn't know about this. So we've tried to maintain that small company culture and removing barriers to leadership. I think that's the one thing when you grow, you get to 130 people, and you want to make sure that you can still get hold of me, and you still want to be able to talk to all the directors and the managers without feeling like you have to go through like your own manager or your team lead or anything like that. So making sure they remove those barriers to getting hold of us, and I still do every single employee that joins. I still do an intro call with them. I do a face-to-face, and that comes across really well and works really well because I get to understand them a bit better, and they get to know that I'm there for them if they need me, and I provide support for them if they ever need that support. And then that's been one thing that's sort of helped to grow the culture that we wanted to grow throughout. And so I think mainly it's those things really that I've found relatively challenging to kind of keep that up. But I think that we're doing a pretty good job in most areas.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm nodding my head along. Like I can resonate to working on the business rather than in the business. I think a lot of founders can, and that's kind of the aspiration, but easier said than done. And you keep kind of getting sucked back in. So definitely resonate with that. And I think a lot of things that you're doing around the transparency and speaking with all the new hires as well is all good stuff. So definitely seems you're doing a lot of the right things and aspiring to get to being in that position of working on the business and getting out of the weeds. If you could go back to when you joined the business, from what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I was very topical at the moment, obviously with the raise, that I would probably that would be my main core focus, and it would be things like, not necessarily that we needed to do it, when we need, it's not, it by any means desperation to do it, but it's just a case of planning way more in advance. We kind of said, hey, do we think we should go raise some money and actually launch defense.com and take this thing to the next level, like, next year? Like, what do we think? And we sat down and we said, well, yeah, I think it's the right time. The product's ready. I think we can go do this thing. And then realized how much effort and how much work it goes into doing this, and how much frog kissing you got to do before you get to the right people, and then all the due diligence on top of that. So we've kind of got this mindset now, which I'd sort of advocate to any founder, that you've got this strategy that you should always be in a position where you're ready to sell your business if you really wanted to. Not because you've got aspirations to sell it necessarily, but just that's the types of information that they want to know if you're trying to raise money. And maybe there is a scenario where you should just suddenly think, actually it's a good time to sell, and I've got other projects, other things I want to move on to, and maybe fell out of love with whatever project you're working on that time. Having all that data ready to go just saves you a massive headache. And I will say one other thing as well around investors. I hope there's not too many investors going to be listening on this call, but they always ask you the same questions, but in a slightly different way, and they want the data just slightly different. It's pretty much exactly the same question, but no, they want to see it in this other way that the last investor asked the same question and asked it slightly differently. So we've been very focused on being a data-driven company. Before this, actually, we sat down during one of our board meetings and said, you know what, we really need to get a good handle on our key metrics. Let's just get as much data as we can from everything. From how much time do we, our team's being utilized, and how's the platform performing, where are our leads coming from, any information that we can get, we're building into a data lake that we can then use with a Power BI product. And we've got we brought in a data analyst fairly early on to say, right, we want to be that data-driven company. So when we went round to do our looking at doing our raise, we actually just provide a Power BI dashboard, and we just say, right, here's our whole P&L. And then we just expose it directly to them through Power BI, and they can just cut the data out if they want. If they need to export the data, they can. And so that's kind of the early stages of building out your data room, but not to that level of detail. It's pretty much just you paying it P&L and a few other bits and pieces. And then what we were doing is, as we were getting asked new questions like, okay, what about NRR? We'd then be pulling NRR dashboards in, and then being able to share that through the same mechanism. So we just go back to them and say, right, we've added the NRR to the BI dashboard, away you go. So we've done well, but I think, and we had that data very early on. I think it's just the point of, it took us a little while to get to all those things they wanted. Then they were like, okay, what's your budget look like? And then we said, well, we've got an organic budget, and then we've got our aspirational budget. And so we added those to the system. And so by the time you're talking to, your fourth, fifth, maybe even 10th investor, you're already there. You kind of know what they're going to ask you. You've got the data ready to go. You kind of just share it with them. So I think it would have been, starting off that journey, just having all that ready to go, so we could just kind of straight away share it. And there's definitely signs of that already. I mean, if you do enough reading, you'll find that everyone says, like, make sure you get your LTV to CAC and all that stuff ready for those questions. You're going to get them. Know your net retention, get your gross margin, understand your gross margin. All those sorts of things do come up anyway. But we just a bit naive to that in the beginning. We had the data eventually, but it was just, we probably could have done a much better a job of getting that in earlier. I would say.
Yeah. No, good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice there. What about looking forward to 10 years from now? And if you're replacing, you're $100 million plus, I think in 10 years, you're going to be significantly bigger, right?
Yeah.
And you're replacing yourself with, your successor, moving into the chairman role. Anything that you would have done differently? I mean, it's, obviously a little similar to the kind of the last question, but like if we're looking from now for the next kind of 10 years, anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what book it was now, but I read a book very early on that said something that was at the time quite shocking to me. But I thought, actually having now been in that chair and been in the shoes, was that it gets to a point where you realize that as a CEO, you probably need a different CEO now. You get to that kind of scale where it's probably not you anymore, either because you just don't have the experience, or maybe you're more on the founder side where you like to build stuff and you like to get more involved. And there's people that have done this many times over and are going to take you from 50 to 100 million, or 100 million to $1 billion company, or whatever that becomes in the future. So it's always been in my mind that at some point I'm going to have that debate with myself, like, is it still me or is it somebody else that we need to bring in? But yeah, I think there is this kind of the feeling that I have where in 10 years time, the company is going to be much, expectation is going to be a very different company, and they're definitely going to be dealing at a global scale, which we're sort of laying down the foundations for now. And we need somebody to be really that focused on the business. I can imagine that it'll be spending most of your time in board meetings, or, you're not going to be building product anymore, and you're not going to be talking to the product teams. You're going to be way much more disconnected from that. So I think my kind of my advice to myself in 10 years time is to just, really understand what you want and sort of step aside for the right person is probably what I'd be telling myself. Because I know I'm kind of that competitive person as well, that would probably be saying, I can still do this. I should just hammer it off and go for it myself. But you got to balance it with, is that really what you're good at and the right thing for you to be doing in the future? So it's probably just sitting myself down and having a proper chat about what is it that you want for the future of the company. But ultimately, the company is the most important part in that journey. So that's where I'll be working on.
Good stuff. And we mentioned a couple of times about I think at the beginning and in the middle that you joined the SaaStock founder membership.
Yeah.
And for those that are listening, SaaStock, we launched the SaaStock founder membership last year. It was a kind of like product of coming out of COVID, thinking about how do we deliver value online to SaaS founders and bring them together. And really what we're looking to build is the best support network for B2B SaaS founders globally, doing this through peer groups, networking, education. You yourself, why did you join? And what is the value that you received so far?
Yeah, I mean, it was a suggestion from my co-founder. He said, I've joined. I can't even remember why Mark came about it, but he said to me, look, I've joined this thing and it's really good. You really enjoy it actually, and I think it was more the enjoyment of listening to other about the people's businesses. But personally, from my point of view, it was more that first time co-founder that I thought I probably do need to just talk to somebody other than my co-founder, to get a different perspective on things. Obviously, you talk to people within the business, but they're at slightly different challenges to what you talk about as a co-founder. And they're great because the circle's brilliant because they hold you to account. At the end of each of our circles, we talk about what do we want to have got done by the next one. And we know that we're going to come into that next circle, and they're going to be grilling us on whether we did it or not and why we didn't do it. And so first and foremost, they're holding you to account, which there's not many people out there that when you're in the position that we're in as founders that are holding you to account, aside from your co-founder and maybe your staff to some degree. And yeah, they don't mince words either. If they think you're doing something wrong, they'll definitely hold you to account to it, and they'll tell you if they think you're doing it wrong, and they'll give you great ideas and suggestions. And likewise, you can throw it back on them when you sort of look at some of the things they're doing and give them advice. But ultimately, the best thing about it is that you can talk honestly with each other. Nobody's going to chastise you for doing the wrong thing. They know that they've been through the same problems, and yeah, you just get a different perspective on stuff. And yeah, we talk about all different things. You get into, we've been talking about more recently just about how to position the products online, or how do I build this next product. I mean, even actually just generally on the network, I've had a few people reach out and say, hey, you mentioned on the chat that you've integrated with third-party partners, and we've just set up a call and had a chat, and I've explained what we did and how it worked with us, and gave them some ideas and things like that they could take away and support each other. So I think that's the main thing. It's just the support that you've got, that other set of ears that you can sound ideas out to, and they can say whether they've done it before, or or share some ideas that you can use to maybe trial and do things differently. So that's really been the main thing, and it has helped us to sort of drive towards some decisions that we were maybe debating and procrastinating about a little bit.
Great. Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, and we appreciate you being a great SaaStock founder member as well. So, I mean, any founders that are listening that want to make it, a less lonely, kind of like job, and looking at potentially kind of growing faster with the support of other founders, then, hopefully the SaaStock founder membership can really add value to you. And as we come to, I just kind of with the end of the podcast, Oliver, like, where can people find you online, find defense.com online? Any investors that were listening that will want to reach out, where can people find you?
Yeah, we spend a lot of money on all the domains, so you can pretty much get defense.com, whether it's spelled in the English way or the American way. But we're mainly in the American way. So you can find defense.com just by going to defense.com. Obviously Bulletproof, so out there as well, bulletproof.co.uk. And but yeah, the best place to get in contact with me, either do it through SaaStock, or the other option is to get me on LinkedIn. So best places to find me there. Yeah.
How much did you spend on the domain?
A lot of money.
Okay, all right. I know some other podcast interviews that would really push you there, but I'll leave it. But Oliver, really appreciate you coming on the show. Great speaking to you. Look forward to speaking further, back in the membership. But thanks so much, Oliver Pinson-Roxburgh, CEO of defense.com and Bulletproof, for being on the SaaS Revolution.
Cheers,
show.
Alex.